Landlords. Who was your worst tenant? Story 1. My current tenant just moved out. I had a beautiful home 3 years ago. 3-bedroom, fully solar, updated everything, nice bamboo floors. Enter my tenant. Red flags were not immediate. She had a great history with prior residences. A couple of exceptions were made. She wanted to pay $100 less than I had listed, asking if she could plant things in the garden, etc. Fast forward 6 months or so. Rent starts being late. Not only late, but she would not let me know until the day rent was due that she needed to pay 3 or 4 days later. When I could come by to collect the rent, she would tell me things were broken, disposals, sink clogged, etc., which is all fine, but she would tell me it's been broken for 3 weeks and just now decided to tell me. We talk and text frequently about rent and other things, yet she could never inform me when stuff was broken until I dropped by. This all came to a head when she got rats in the house. I go over to collect rent after 2 months not being there, and holy hell. A fan globe was broken and the glass was all over the kitchen. For multiple days they told me she had a 4-year-old in the house too. The bathroom has roaches all in it, trash along the side of the house spilling out of cans, holes in the drywall, small but there, blinds, nice wooden ones, strings broken, and the house smells awful like rat pee. She tells me there have been rats there for a few weeks. Well, I wonder if it has anything to do with all the trash outside and open food dishes in the sink that reek. I never in my life thought I would have to tell a grown woman with kids that, yes, you need to put garbage in the garbage can. No, you cannot leave food out until it rots, otherwise you get these lovely pests. Anyway, even though it's in her lease to deal with rodent/pest control issues, I do it myself. I hired a company under contract to handle the whole thing for a 1-year guarantee for like $1,000. All she has to do is call the number I give her whenever she sees or hears a rat or anything. Well, guess what she does not do? She would occasionally text me saying she saw a rat. I called pest control to come take care of it. Then nothing. This went on for 6 months. All the while, rats chewed through my stove wires, now not under warranty since they don't cover pest issues, clogged the dishwasher, wrecked my cabinets, etc. They just moved out last week. Holes in the doors now. Looks like they tried to crowbar the interior doors open for some reason. Split jambs, garbage left all over the yard, front and back. My floors have this inexplicable grease all over and sticky things. Her child drew in crayon all over the doors. It's a mess. If you ever rent a place you care about, first, stop caring about it, and second, be choosy and take a few months unrented to get someone you are sure about. And I know this is probably going to be a controversial topic to cover because there are a lot of issues of rent skyrocketing. But this one I can feel for the landlord. This person was just not communicative. If she has glowing reviews from the past, there must be something just snapped in this person if it got taken out on this house. Sounded nice. Story 2. Great deities. I don't know where to begin. Cat ladies. 25 to 40 cats in an apartment with hardwood floors. Probably $80,000 worth of damage. Guy who decided to go full Picasso on a recently completed renovated apartment complex, including getting paint on the newly polished and gorgeous oak hardwood floors. I'm really dreading telling my bosses about this one. Lying shrew of a woman and her mother. Got her back, though. Full story in Malicious Compliance. Young couple live in squalor, keep cats inside a shut bedroom door, have a kid, then get power and heat shut off on them in November. Sad, really. Insane parking lady. Incredibly racist, hateful, gossipy, refuses to listen, always talks trash behind your back. I really can't wait to get rid of her. Grandma rents an apartment, lets her grandkid and her boyfriend move in. Keep the place nice. Then they break up, shut the power off themselves, and turn the keys over to some squatter who was tossing bottles of bleach outside that smell like gasoline. Mr. Macho thinks it was cool to karate chop and roundhouse kick every door in the apartment. Roadhouse. Curse you, Mr. Macho. Ms. Disgustings. Horribly gross people who don't clean and then wonder why they have mushrooms in the living room. Teenage kid of a Ms. Disgusting that goes around peeing in everyone's windows at another complex. Turkey lady. She buys a frozen turkey, then puts it in the fridge and promptly leaves it. For months. We all thought she was unalive because of the smell. She had barricaded her door, so it took us tearing down a fire door to get in. She was there, just didn't want to answer the door. So many college kids think that just because they're living on their own, they can do junk and get away with it. I've tossed out so many college kids, and it's always something kind of fun to do, because their parents are almost always co-signers. Parents, make your kids live in the dorms. I could go on for days. Who's the worst? I don't even know anymore. This person sounds like a property manager rather than a landlord, and must be some apartment complex. Either that or just a group of houses if they've got so many stories. How long of a time frame do you think all these stories originated? I mean, if it was in the span of 2 or 3 years, I'd feel for this person. Story 3. The Dog Ladies. Around 1993, friends of my father's bought a neighboring farm which came with a beautifully maintained classic country-style 3-bedroom house. Having taken out a massive bank loan to buy the new farm, they decided to rent out the house to help with payments. A couple showed up, wanting to live their dream of country life with their 2 German Shepherd dogs. They were charming ladies, and it sounded like a great match. Fast forward 2 years. They are almost 6 months delinquent on rent. The farmers are getting desperate. The ladies said if the landlords came on their property, they would have them arrested. There is clearly way more than 2 dogs here. The ladies are not even living inside the house. Only dogs are in the house. Humans are living in a shabby old camper van now parked out front. Nothing has been maintained. The house is clearly falling apart. The lawn is just weeds. The stench can be detected well before you get near the house. This has to end. One blessed day, it did end. The ladies got up and moved their camper van, and they were gone. But the dogs were still there. First call, SPCA. Now, this predates the internet carrying stories about massive animal hordes, but this would have been a major headline at the time. Over 60 dogs were seized from inside the house. 60! Plus, there were several decaying, unalive dogs found as well. The dogs had chewed and eaten away all the original woodwork, walls, a lot of their flooring, anything they could, even each other. The urine and feces had caused everything to rot through. Not 1 square inch of the home was salvageable. It was heartbreaking when the demolition came. The original family had worked so hard to meticulously maintain this gorgeous country home, and it was all plowed under only 2 years later. It was a total loss. I was too young to know what happened with insurance companies, but I do know they did not rebuild. Those poor dogs. And I feel sorry for the owners, too, obviously. This one is sad. Just 2 people taking advantage. It seems unbelievable that they were 6 months behind, yet they could threaten that they could have these people arrested if the landlords came on their property. What caused them to collect over 60 dogs and then live out back? I know we love our animals, but that's just seems too much. It's a shame they couldn't get any part of it fixed and continue with the rent. I wonder how much this set them back and if they were able to keep the whole farm. Story 4. Stephen. He and his girlfriend moved in. They led us to believe he was employed full-time and she was a student. Soon after, we were dealing with him cooking, eating, using common areas at like 2 to 4 a.m. in the morning constantly. Strong smells like car battery in the early a.m. Probably tweaking. His attempts at cleaning consisted of trying to mop the walls and surfaces instead of wiping them down, or just using the mop on the floor. Cringes. Kept a puppy in the house/room at times when he thought no one was around, which was definitely a no-no. Late with rent in his second month, became hostile with all other housemates with almost any interaction, or when asked to clean up his messes. Tried to pick fights with housemates to bait them to hit him or overreact. Luckily, we didn't. Dude was a psycho. Ended up giving him his 30 days notice before he had been here his second month. All the while, his poor girlfriend, who we all thought was in school, was actually pregnant with his kid, and that's why she was always home, and they had been running from/avoiding her family. She was a nice girl, but you could tell she had no control in the relationship. Apparently, it also came to light that maybe their relationship started when she was like 14 or 15, and he was probably 20 at the time. Grooming her, it seemed. He threatened us with all kinds of legal action. Actually did have to get a lawyer and make sure we were in the clear. Worst 3 months with a tenant/housemate. We actually threw a party when they left. I can only imagine that poor girl's life, or the kids. Only have bad wishes for Stephen, since he was such a scumbag douche canoe. Douche canoe is actually such an amazing insult. Story 5. A family of hippies. And I mean full-on, flowers in their hair, guitar-playing, kumbaya-singing, smelled-like-butt hippies. I used to manage a complex of townhouses, and they moved into one of our houses. After 4 days, they threw a huge fit about how they'd have to take their daughter to the ER due to radiation from a nearby cell tower. They told us they were moving out immediately and demanded an on-the-spot refund of their deposit. Of course, I said no and went to check the townhouse. It was completely destroyed. There were black marks and baseball-sized holes all over the walls. The carpet had been torn up, and the entire place smelled of urine and feces. We later found animal feces under the carpet. It was just absolutely disgusting. Quite frankly, I was astonished that anyone could do that much damage in just 4 days. Somehow, I don't think the cell tower was what made their daughter sick. And needless to say, they didn't get their deposit back. Story 6. I do not have a tenant, but my friend here, who doesn't have online capabilities, is telling me about a current tenant. This couple, nicknamed Dumb and Dumber, are helpless. She overloaded the bathroom outlet and flipped the outlet switch. She didn't know all she had to do was push the button back in and she would have electricity again, so she calls an electrician who warns her it will be a minimum of $150 for him to drive out there and fix this. He walks in and spends less than a second pushing the button in. She then sends the landlord the bill, which the landlord refused to pay. Calls asking who will clean their bathroom, mow their grass, can they come out to flip the breaker box for them? I don't like this fridge, buy us a new one. Why is it a big deal if we're late with rent? Our washing machine we moved in with isn't working well. Isn't it your job to buy us a new one? What is an air filter and why do I have to change it? I need someone to hold our mail while we go on vacation. Can you contact the post office? 2 absolutely helpless adults with kids. Oh, and I had to add this in. The air conditioner fails. She lets them know at maybe 9 p.m. at night. They contact an HVAC repair company who will be out there in the AM. Instead of waiting less than 12 hours, she goes to the store in the middle of the night and buys multiple window units to install at 2 a.m., which she cannot do because the outlets are too hard for her. She then tells the landlord They're responsible for paying her for the multiple window AC units. The HVAC guy had the AC repaired in less than an hour that morning. The tenant is still out $400 because legally the landlord doesn't have to pay her for that. I think you meant to say 2 kids with kids. There are times in my life where there were some adult skills that I learned a bit too late. I will admit that. These 2 people, I don't get it. Did they even read the contract? What did they think a landlord did? It sounds like both of them came from very privileged households where everything was done for them. It's a wonder the woman managed to give birth on her own without asking a nurse to help her out somehow. Story 7. Son of a Landlord here. Parents own a flat where I was born and raised while living on the top floor. About 10 years ago, they had these 2 tenants living in the unit below them. I called them Dumb and Dumber, both males. Another Dumb and Dumber. I was around 25 at the time and just moved back in with my parents to save up some money to buy my first house. D and D were around the same age. My parents always stressed the importance to new tenants about the building being a quiet building, as stated in the lease. No parties, no loud music after 9 p.m., just be respectful to your neighbors. Well, D&D like to party and have lots of late-night company at least 5 nights a week. One night, about 1 in the morning, they were having a party. I was just getting back to the house, finishing my smoke outside, when I heard my mom knocking on D&D's door. I heard her say knock off the party and keep it down as other tenants had already called to complain. As my mom got back to her apartment, I finished my smoke and started walking up. As I walked past the door, I heard one of them say, "She's lucky I didn't answer the door. I would have snapped on her." Oh, hell no. I'm a pretty big guy, 6'5", 240 pounds, so I had no problem knocking on their door. When I did, the whole place went silent. One answers the door, and I say, "Who's going to snap on who now?" They denied ever saying it and apologized for the loudness, yada yada yada. Next time, I told them I'll just call the cops, and if they want a party, move and find a different place to live and read the lease more carefully. I think I scared the hell out of them because we didn't hear much from their apartment after. Other than that, my parents have been kinda lucky with tenants. Well done for standing up for your mom. Story 8. I wasn't old enough to remember this, but my dad tells me the story once in a while. We rented our second floor to this older lady who always was behind on her bills and tried every excuse in the book to postpone or not pay them. Well, one day, my dad and her got to the house at the same time, so he was able to confront her about some payments that were very late, and she was like, "Oh, I have the money upstairs. Just follow me." While they were heading upstairs, she dialed 911, unbeknownst to my dad, and when they got upstairs, she was stalling, pretending to look for the money until a cop car came. When she heard the car, she started screaming and pushing my dad and was yelling to the cop that my dad was trying to intimately assault her. Fortunately for us, the lady was keeping a secret roommate without my parents' knowledge, and she happened to be in one of the rooms and heard the whole thing. She came out of the room while the officer was starting to apprehend my dad and explained to the officer what actually happened. Wow, what a piece of filth. Good on that secret roommate for stepping in. Story 9. My dad rented out our old house. He thought he had a good tenant. Tenant even asked to repaint the interior if we deducted 1 month's rent. Sounded good. Then, when they wanted to move out, we got a look at the place. When they painted, they used the cheapest paint, painted doorknobs and outlets, and left big paint strokes. Looked way worse than what it must have looked unpainted. And there were large holes torn in the carpet. And none of the toilets worked. They just ran constantly. And they must have hung wet clothes on the bathroom faucets because none of those worked and were rusted beyond repair. My childhood home looked terrible and we had to repair it. Oh, the reason we thought he'd be a good tenant? He was an executive hire to run the local hospital. Seems him and his family must have just lived like pigs in that filth. Running the hospital. Not only do I actually feel bad for this landlord, I actually feel happy that I never lived in this town and ever got sick and had to go to the hospital. How clean was the hospital? What did he let people get away with? No, I shudder. I shudder. Story 10. My landlord was the worst tenant. For some reason, this dude keeps calling me, leaving a message while I'm at work. Oh yeah, around 1 I'm gonna walk through your apartment for XXXX reason. Until I told him he needs to notify me ahead of time. I think it's 1 to 3 days. Then the day before, he started leaving messages. Every Thursday he goes through the house for XXXX reasons. Oh, need to check water pressure. Oh, need to check if molding. Oh, I need to check if your deity damn bed is working. I swear, every week has got to be some form of harassment. Just tell him to get a bigger SD card for his hidden camera, man.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 11. Kyle was a tweaker who believed because I told him he couldn't self-stimulate in front of his window and leave the finished product on the glass that I was Satan incarnate. Kyle also likes to steal everyone's mail and break into random apartments. Kyle would go on a Walter White crystal bender and trash his apartment and the common areas until he did enough damage for the police to finally put him in jail for one night. Kyle would get out and stalk me and my friends, showing up in restaurants where we were eating or at art galleries where we were touring, where he would follow us around and make threats. The police would tell Kyle, "Don't do that. It's not nice," and then leave me to deal until he lays a hand on you. Then we can do something. Kyle was why I started carrying a gun. Kyle was finally arrested for 17 counts of felony mail theft and illicit substance possession. But Kyle got ROR'd and came back to an eviction notice. Kyle then pooped, peed, bled, and self-stimulated all over his apartment and left needles in strange places, requiring us to replace all the appliances and flooring along with a 12-foot window. Kyle was a tool. Kyle is going to unalive someone one day. Story 12. My mother owns a house on the coast she inherited from her aunt and rents it out to people now that she's moved. Makes great money considering it's a decent-sized town and the house is close to the beach. She doesn't allow animals due to the old wool carpets that are not easily replaceable, but she legally cannot keep children out. I didn't see it for myself, but after several attempts to contact the tenants, she drove down there herself and let herself in. Place was a total pigsty. Diapers, vomit, baby food everywhere, literal feces smeared on the wall and flung onto the ceilings. Carpets were soaked and stained with pee. Tenants were nowhere to be found. She talked to the neighbor, and they'd apparently been gone for a month. Had to get the police to track them down. Story 13. One of my clients had the tenants from hell. Things were going great for a year until they burned the house pretty severely from attempting to make hemp oil. Obviously, after this happened, they attempted to kick them out. They refused to leave and even wouldn't let the contractors work on the property damages. Finally, months pass, and they get approval to have law enforcement force them out after not paying rent. Then they could finally work on getting the house fixed up again to rent out again. Once the house was fixed up, the old tenants broke into the home in revenge, poured cement down the drains, and turned on the faucets, thus flooding the entire house. So then comes the second property damage claim on their hands. They do have new and great tenants now, and I know they've gotten the law involved at this point, but it's crazy how some people are so inconsiderate and entitled these days. Story 14. Not a landlord, but I worked as a handyman one summer, and we had to repair a house that was rented out by college students. We get inside, and the place is absolutely trashed. There were holes in the walls, in the doors, the windows were broken, cabinets ripped off, and to top it all off, the entire place reeked of pee because the previous tenants locked their dog in a small room while they went home on vacation. We put an absurd amount of work into the house over a 3-day span. I've never seen a house in that condition before. But one day, we were talking to the landlord, and she made the comment, "These were the second worst tenants we've ever had." My coworker and I looked at each other and asked what the worst tenants were because, like I said, it looked like a war was fought inside this house. She tells us that one time, The house had pretty similar damage, except before the tenants left, they filled hundreds of condoms with water and pinned them to the ceiling. I don't repair houses anymore. Story 15. My super told me this story about a guy who was getting evicted in our building a few years back. Apparently, it was a real piece of work and hadn't paid rent in months. Anyway, he put off packing until the day before his eviction and left a bunch of trash and had slashed all his leather furniture and left it behind, and glued tinfoil on all the windows for some reason. The unit was in a real state, so they completely renovated it. New tile, new hardwood, new bathroom, the works. But they couldn't get rid of the smell, a pungent, fishy trash odor, made worse by it being summertime, which just permeated the entire unit. Even though they had cleaned it top to bottom, it wouldn't go away. You know that spot under your kitchen sink cabinet? That flat baseboard-like piece that covers the empty space from the base of the cabinet to the floor? You guessed it. The evicted guy had apparently pried it open, stuffed it with raw fish garbage, and sealed that baby back up as his last curse you for being evicted. I don't know what sparked them to check, but it had been a couple of weeks before they found it. Story 16. I'm not a landlord, nor is anyone in my family, but a guy who used to live in town owned a lot of properties that he would rent out. This is the story of the one right down the street from me. So just next door to the guy's house was this trailer house that he would rent out. A few years ago, a family moved into it. The only thing I can guarantee about them is that there was an older kid and some younger kids. The older one got mad one day and punched his hand through one of the windows and screwed up his hand and had to have it amputated. There was a room in the house that I had been told was basically a place where the children were literally pooping in. I don't remember much more about the atrocities that probably went on in there, but it was so bad I guess that the owner didn't even want to spend the money repairing it and just had it torn down and hauled away. Story 17. I owned a duplex that I rented out. I had several different sets of tenants. All of them were special in their own ways. First renters, I was new at it and naive, were bat-scat crazy older couples. I lived on one side at the time, and they were constantly banging on my door accusing each other of things. Like one was always trying to terminate the other, and I needed to help them. The lady once brought over a half-drunk bottle of vodka, telling me the guy had poisoned it. They didn't last long. Another family that moved in had a bat-scat crazy mom. She was so nice at first, but then became the meanest, most dramatic woman I've ever encountered. She accused my 2-year-old of calling her son a racial slur. He didn't. He was 2. I moved out and new renters moved in, and the two hated each other. Once they got into a fight about whose side of the house the garbage cans were in front of. The original neighbors got mad that the new neighbors pushed OG's own trash can to their own side, so they drove their truck into it and smashed it, and then had the nerve to send me a pic of it. You smashed into your own freaking trash can with your own freaking car and are mad at your neighbors for it? They were nuts. I hated them. I could go on and on. Sold the rental. I missed the income, but not the hassle. Story 18. Obligatory not a landlord, but I did work at a property management company for about a year. There was a couple that seemed super nice. They were polite and young with literally no red flags. We helped them fill out the application. The landlord told them all the rules. No pets without deposit, don't break stuff, the usual. After 4 months of their year-long lease, they just left. When one of my coworkers went to check up on them, she found that the house was trashed. There was feces covering the walls, duct tape over all the windows, needles scattered. There was even a bunch of blood stains in one of the bedrooms. Oh, and they punched a few holes in the walls and ceilings and clogged all 3 toilets. They were apparently horse addicts and let their friends use their place as well to do other horse addict activities. Took a long time to get that place livable again. Story 19. Worked for a property management company, and dog owners were the worst. We had several that didn't let their dogs outside. They just let them pee and poop inside. The most frustrating thing was dealing with them when they moved out and they would get angry at not getting their deposit back. I can't stand dog owners like that. I'm a dog owner myself. Not only is it disrespectful to your landlord, but it's also cruel to the dog. Plus, when I used to rent, I had the hardest time finding a place that allowed dogs because of that. Even though I'm a responsible dog owner, some people ruin it for everyone. Story 20. The dude currently residing in my property. He's been a great tenant, a great guy in general, although he struggles to pay the rent on time, even though I've asked him numerous times to just slide it under the door when he's ready. But recently, he's been trashing the place, making dents in the tiles, nailing blocks of wood in front of the door, peas on the rug, etc. I went to inspect the property a few days ago, and it looked like someone had ransacked the place. But despite all that, he's still a great guy. Even came to see my theater production. I heard he recently lost a friend or his car burnt down. Hope you're doing better, dude. The dude abides. Story 21. My friend's a landlord. He once evicted tenants in January after they had failed to pay rent for several months, even though he had tried to be patient with them. He owned several properties and didn't get over to that apartment for about a week. Turns out they had turned the heat all the way up, opened all the windows, and walked out. Cost him a fortune. He tried suing and lost. Wow, this kind of petty and cruel hogwash makes me want to stay away from renting. Selling, I think, is a bit better. Once they pay you the full sum, they can trash their own home as much as they like without you having to worry about it. Story 22. Tenant paid deposit and first month's rent. I'm guessing somebody got laid off real soon after because they didn't move much in. After not paying for the second month and not answering phone calls, it was time for eviction, which goes on record. Tenant makes up a story about police saying they couldn't come back after the shooting. I have no idea what shooting they're talking about, but if they can produce a police report, we can cancel the eviction. Tenant goes to a perfectly decent house and shoots up the back door. Eviction process continued, and I had to get a new door installed. Story 23. Son of a Landlord. I was sent to clean out a garage unit for a few extra bucks. Brought a guy with me because it was a lot. Turns out the lady who'd been renting the unit had been secretly living in the garage for months. We threw out used needles, family photos, one particularly odd couch that we had to break into pieces just to lift it out of there, and the piece de resistance, 4 5-gallon buckets full of human waste. We didn't know it was human waste until the last bucket was on the truck and the lid popped off and splashed a little bit. I have never smelled anything so foul. Story 24. I have a friend who has always been a perpetual roommate, probably to hold on to more of his paycheck living in the Bay Area. 5 hours ago, he explained to me that the place he lived in was completely redone, in part because the previous tenant spread kitty litter all over the carpet in one of the rooms. She then let her 6 cats dump all over that room like a giant litter box. But I've heard that this is not as rare as it should be. Anyone else had stories about tenants like this? Story 25. My ex, who I didn't realize was my tenant until we broke up and I tried to get her leave, and she just said, "Nope, I've established residency. This house is as much mine as it is yours." There's a ton of stuff I'm leaving out. She destroyed my carpet with projectile Kool-Aid vodka vomit, as the story is depressing. I had vomit Gatorade all over my kitchen. That junk is hard to clean. I'm still finding sticky spots. Story 26. One day, a cable guy came to hook up my cable, and through conversation, learned my coworker is his landlord. He went on a rant about how much of a tool my coworker is for charging him rent when I wasn't even living there. I just had my stuff there. I feel bad for anyone who has him as a tenant. Story 27. I had a tenant that turned out to be my real estate agent, using someone else's credentials, and then stole my identity, bought an Audi and a Yamaha motorcycle, and left me with the bill. Oh, and he put holes in all the walls and didn't pay rent. It's a longer story than that, but he was caught, and now he is housed in prison. Story 28. Same as many others. Rented out my house to folks on benefits and gave them a chance. Never paid. I had also stipulated no cats as I'm allergic, and if I ever wanted to live there again, needed it to be cat hair free. Didn't pay. Got a cat. Took months to evict them and ended up selling the property. They just didn't give a care. Story 29. They used my house as a heavy metal venue. Mid-level nationally touring acts were playing in my basement. The next-door neighbors never told me because they got in for free. I have mixed feelings about this.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.